Good to the tribe. So today we're going to talk about mulatto to Negro in 10 years. And before I start, I want to give a shout out to everybody still preaching genealogy. I've seen a lot of people videos here and there, and people are still telling people, do your genealogy. It's the only way. It's the only way to show how they misclassified us. Shouts out to Tasha Z. Heard her talking about it. Shouts out to Opie, Miha, putting out family records just showing undeniable proof. And shouts out to everybody else that's showing it and telling people what to do. And I know it's hard sometimes. And I know sometimes it gets tiring, but it's the only way. It's the only way to show how we were done wrong. So let's get to it. And sometimes it might make your brain explode. What the fuck? So let's get to it. 1920 census. This is my great-great-grandmother, Ella Richardson, South Carolina, Richland County. See, it's 1920 census population. And for most people that have seen census, we already know what's at the top. But let's get to this census and see what's going on. So they always have heads at the top. They always have the last name under the head of household. You can see Ella right underneath, the wife. One thing you could see, they have John listed as black, and they have Ella and the rest of the family listed as mulatto when you do look at it. Like they crossed out the black and put mulatto, which is crazy and kind of weird to me. On the census, they could read and write. But it's just wild. You would sit there and the census taker, did they mistake and put black at first and then crossed out and put mulatto? Or what was really going on? And you can see on this census record too, you have other families with the same thing, where it's crossed out and put mulatto too. So it's just weird. One thing about these census, and when you do see your census, it's a lot of mistakes on them. They wanted to make mistakes. They wanted to mess up the ages. They wanted to mess up the race. They wanted to mess up the name. That way it's harder for you to try to find out who it is and for who you're really trying to look for or locate or trying to get further back into your genealogy. You can see the birthplace and you can see job fields and things like that. There goes some of the other mulattoes that they crossed out as black too. I guess it was another family that was around that must have looked the same, or they must have been American Indians too. So it's just crazy to see this on the census. There was another family with it crossed out. So it's just horrible to see that they actually step foot in these people's house or your relatives' houses and listen to them and still messed up their information anyway because they didn't care. So let's jump to the next one. So jumping into the next one, 1930 census, 10 years later. One thing you'll see there at the top of the census paper, and you can already see South Carolina, Richland County. We'll go across. Population schedule, 1930. You can see where they're from, father, mother. See their races. You can see they were farmers, General Farm. You can see he owned his farm. You can see an O for owning his farm. Wasn't a veteran, but he worked for himself, yes. And I know a lot of you guys in your records have this, farm owners. You have a lot of misclassifications, but you can see it at the top, John again and Ella. You can see they have him as Negro now. So 10 years you go from mulatto to Negro. So what are we trying to hide? You can see some of their granddaughters and grandsons there this time. Maybe the other kids weren't around when they actually did these census. You can see they could read and write. So it's just, you can see the O for landowner. And we'll hit to the bottom too, just so you can see what I'm talking about for its O, owned. Worked on his own account. So he wasn't hired by anybody. He had his own farm. He had his own land. They lived on the land. Remember, we were rural people. We weren't urban. You hear a lot of these talks about urban concrete jungles. We're not from these concrete jungles. We're from the country. We're from the farmland, but we just forgot. But just to see this and see owned land, mulatto to Negro. How does a mulatto turn to a Negro in 10 years? Or are they the same? Or are they black? Or are they African American? Or what are they? We know what they are because we've seen these records. But I want you guys to take the time out to do your genealogy. I know a lot of people, relatives, have been misclassified as white to mulatto to black to Negro. You'll see some with name changes. You'll see some with the wrong ages. So just get to it, and we're going to get through this together. So that was just a couple census records, just to show you guys what you can find. Like we say, genealogy is the key. Genealogy is first. And make sure you're taking the time out to do these things. You want to know who your relatives are. And you want everybody else to not try and figure out who you are. Be able to show and prove. Be able to tell people who you are. But I love you guys. Feathers up, tribe up, wise up, rise up. And let me say this. When you know who you are and you can tell people who you are, watch what they say to you. Damn!